Be a special edition of Preps Today with John Millea, starring, guess what, John Millea of the MSHSL. Well, you know what, John, I'm just going to let you introduce our guest today.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. It's good to be back on here with you this week. It's kind of a quiet time in high school athletics and activities. We're waiting for spring to spring itself. But yeah, we have a special guest, a guy I've known for a long time, Rick Grammond, who's the, I don't know what to call him. He's not the official mayor of Pierz, Minnesota. But Rick is a guy who has done so many cool things. You know, had a long radio career. Then he transitioned into streaming before most of us knew what that was. And what he's done has just been unbelievable. Anything related to Pierz schools, whether it's sports or school events or dances or FFA meetings, whatever it is, Rick is there. He's streaming about it's radio, but it's not. You're not going to get it on a radio station. You Are There Sports. Is that correct, Rick? You Are There Sports, right?
You Are There Sports, just like the common words would be.
You are there because you are always there, and you bring people there with you, and we're kind of working off of a big moment at the state boys basketball tournament during one of the championship games. At halftime, Rick was recognized at center court at Williams Arena with the MSHSL Outstanding Media Service Award. Very well deserved. And that reminds me of a discussion I had with Dave Stead, the former director of the high school league, years ago. We were talking about all the awards the high school league gives for officials and administrators and kids. Just a lot of great awards. And I said to Dave, hey, we should have a media award of some kind. And here we are, this Outstanding Media Service Award. And Rick certainly deserving of that. He and I didn't have a long time to chat. Those tournaments are kind of busy, but it was a great moment to be there as a friend of Rick. And Rick, how did you take that? What was that like for you, being out on center court at Williams Arena and photographers in front of you and receiving that award?
Well, I'm usually, thank you very much, John, for having me, and Jim for having me on your podcast here. It was kind of surreal being on the other end of the focus, I guess, a little bit.
Sure.
Just a fantastic day, and I was very pleased that my good friends from Albany, the boys, were there to win their AA state championship. And I know all of those, Coach Schlegel very well, and a lot of those guys and a lot of those families, because Pierz plays Albany. They're in our conference, so we see them throughout the year, a lot of those kids. So I know them very well, and I'm very happy for them, and nice crowd to be on hand. And it was just an honor to be recognized by the Minnesota State High School League.
And I'll jump in here, John, just to remind everybody, this is Preps Today with John Millea. We're coming to you from the Aquarius Home Services Studios. We're sponsored also by Jody Stay and Pizza Barn in Princeton. Thank you, Jody. This show, covers all kinds of high school sports and activities. John's journeys around the state, his ability to bring great stories to you, whether the written word at mshsl.org, at John's Journal, or here with what I call his spoken word artistry. Appreciate Rick joining us today. Go right ahead, John.
Yeah, Rick, tell us about young Rick. I think you grew up in Gray Eagle. Is that correct? What was life like?
Gray Eagle, Minnesota, which is about 45 miles northwest of St. Cloud, just Sauk Center, Melrose area,
Sure.
Just north there. So it gives you a little geographical reference for you. A very small town, graduated of the class of 24. Still live in Gray Eagle, although I commute to Pierz for all my activities. Mm-hmm. It's 50 minutes from my driveway to the school. So people always say, "Why don't you move to Pierz?" And I say, "That's my decompression time." You get so hyped up, and I'm able to drive home and relax on the way home. Growing up in Gray Eagle is a wonderful thing. It's a small community. I think 385 is the population. So, it's been a great little small town atmosphere, in which I think has helped me fit into these small town schools that I cover. I'm kind of aware of how things work in small schools, as opposed to if I was covering a Wayzata or an Eden Prairie or a school such as that.
Same with me, growing up in a small town. That's I call that my wheelhouse, and we're the same there. I'm sure you listened to radio as a kid. You listened to the Twins probably. How did you get interested in radio, and where was your start?
Well, I always, being an athlete in high school, and Gray Eagle is kind of located between Melrose and Little Falls. So I grew up in the era of boys basketball where I had Frank Wachlewaritz of Little Falls and the Flyers in the mid 70s winning state championships, and then just to my southwest, Mark Olberding and Melrose. So I was like, wow, this is heaven here. And following, the media coverage of the locals and the guy from Little Falls, Mr. Jack Peck, a legend in Minnesota broadcasting with KLTF radio. He'd every once in a while show up at a Gray Eagle game, and it just kind of sparked my interest. So, God, that would be pretty cool, to hear my name. My dad used to coach, and I remember when we wouldn't go to the games as a youngster, listening to a radio, and Coach Grammond is trying to get his troops fired up here or whatever. But I thought, wow, what a neat thing to be able to hear, the action, and know the people that they're talking about. It's not like you're listening to a Yankees game where it's just a major league ball player or anything like that, but you actually know the athletes and the coaches that are taking part. So that's kind of where, and Mr. Peck was a great mentor for me. He was still at Little Falls Radio when I was there, got me started in 1988. And so, yeah, he was kind of the guy that I blueprinted a lot of my things off of, what would Jack do, how he would approach things. One of my memories always is Coach Jerry Cool of the Little Falls Flyers. I remember watching one of their girls' state championship wins, and they didn't go to Coach Cool on the post game, and it always stuck with me that Jerry mentioned, he goes, I can't talk to you right now. And he said this right on live TV. I can't talk to you right now. I got to go talk to Jack first. And I said, God, that was an impact of what local, it probably wouldn't fly with the state high school league now that you're mandated to talk to, your TV contracts and stuff. But it was like, man, Jack made a point that he was going to go talk to his local guy first, and it just, it struck me. And that was always a thing that impressed me about him. His dedication to the local, that he got that respect from the coaches.
Right. So at what point did you take the plunge into streaming audio? How did that come about?
Oh, well, it was 2013. So it's been 12 years now. Like you said, streaming was pretty much in its infancy at that time. And I just wanted to expand what we were able to do with coverage, of some of the, if you want to put a label on them, not lesser sports, but maybe the sports that aren't covered as much. The volleyball matches and the wrestling matches and so on. You get your footballs, your basketballs, and your baseballs are on pretty regularly in high school sports. But what else can be done, to cover these athletes? So, and I was at that point, I was just getting into Facebook, and I had joined a Facebook group about internet streaming broadcasters, a group, and just talking into some discussions. And I ran across a guy from out in Maryland that had his own network, and they streamed what was then the Cal Ripken World Series. And so we started chatting, and he showed me, kind of the insides of what he had to do to set it up, and let me listen, gave me the password to listen. I said, man, this is crystal clear, and everything. Said, this sounds like something that I could really do. And that was kind of the genesis of getting started, was working through that gentleman now out in Maryland, and taking it from there and just saying, hey, I can really expand not only the high school sports, but a heavy dose of amateur baseball in the summer. So once June rolls around, I'm not done. I just rolled into amateur baseball, and then once Labor Day weekend hits, it's amateur baseball state championship weekend, and we've already done a football game by then. So it's a 12-month cycle.
Yeah, you do a great job. I've been to Pierz many times. I've sat next to you at wrestling up there. We've ridden around a golf cart at a cross country meet. It's just like you said, it's focusing on everything. But talk about the other things, just the school, the community events that you are at and that you stream from. What are some of the ones that people may be surprised at?
Well, I guess growing up in a small town, and I know you could relate to this too, where to make a small school work and feel alive, kids have to be involved in almost everything.
Right.
And not just sports. I mean, you were in sports, and if the boys basketball team wasn't playing, the band was playing at the girls game, or you were in choir, or you were in the play. You were in FFA, you were in whatever other clubs they had, just because that's just what everybody did. There were so few people that weren't involved in anything. The number that just went home, you could count on one hand. Maybe they had farm chores to do or whatever, and that's certainly understandable. But the majority of the people that I grew up in my class, we'd just be in everything. And I thought, that's what I thought in Pierz too. I said, I don't care, I'm a sports guy, but I love what our music program does. Mr. Poland, we've got a new choir director that's doing great things. Our drama department is just fabulous. They asked me to introduce couples at the Grand March, at prom, cover homecoming. I broadcast, some of the events, like the state true team track meet is an interesting one to broadcast track.
Sure.
It was something that, hey, I don't know how it'll go over, but we'll try it, and turned out to be really fun. A really fun thing, because at that event, there's always something happening, whether it's a field event or a running event or whatever. They run that like a well-oiled machine. But
they do.
Yeah, I'm just a believer that kids be involved in something. You don't have to be the star quarterback, the point guard, or star pitcher. Be a great actor, actress. Be a trombone player. Come up with some project for FFA or 4-H, or just do whatever, but be involved. That's the biggest message I always have for kids, is because that's the only time you ever get to try all this stuff out, because life changes in a hurry. And they, a lot of time, not every year, but often more years than not, Pierz, and I'm sure a lot of schools do this, they do like their grad bash at the end of the year. They graduate on a Friday night, and then they'll have the kids stay in the gym, and they'll have parents lock up, all kinds of games and food, and to keep the kids occupied all night long. And then they have me come in at like 5 a.m. and give them a one final speech, kind of going away. And it's pretty, they can get pretty emotional, because a lot of the kids by that time, they're really tired. They want to go home anyway, and emotions are running high. But
sure,
when I tell them that, hey, look around, this is the last time ever you're all going to be together. You're going to you could have a reunion next week, and not everyone is going to make it. So
right.
yeah,
Sure.
It's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, I'm pretty jealous of you being so tied into one community like that. That's really special. You do such a great job. Let's talk. Go ahead.
Well, of the community, I really want to say thank you to that group. Going back to the award presentation last weekend at Williams Arena, there is a group of Pierz folks that several years ago kind of pooled their money, and they bought a mini bus, I would say, and they had it painted up in the Pierz school colors and Pioneers, and it's the Pioneer bus, and they take it to road games and whatever, and just kind of road trip as a group. And about 30 of them climbed into that bus, gave up their Saturday, and came down and sat with me, and just took in the presentation. It was just when they walked up through the entryway where I was sitting there with my brothers and sisters, they were obviously an important part of the day too. But to have that kind of like, wow, what do why you didn't have to come down here for this? But It was amazing, and I just appreciated that so much that they took time out of their day to come down to Minneapolis.
Yeah, that makes it even better. That's awesome. Let's talk about the pandemic. We all remember those days and how we tried to be creative and fill the time. Yep. For me, we had a 64 team bracket of high school nicknames, and we did that on Twitter. Mm-hmm. It took weeks and weeks. It was so much fun. I never could have imagined. Yeah, it was just, do you like Spuds or Awesome Blossoms? And you can vote. And then we did, my friend Brian Cole at Moorhead High School had the idea for a video around Be the Light when communities would turn on their lights at outdoor stadiums. And it just became a statewide thing and almost a national thing. And we had Dick Bremer narrate the video. But you did something that's so awesome, Rick. You basically, you read to kids and you read to adults. Tell us about that. That's just remarkable.
Well, one of my favorite things I grew up in an education-based family. My mom was a teacher. My dad was my principal in school. So I was around education very closely, and I've always loved to read, and I just understand the importance of what reading does for building imagination, inquisitiveness, understanding, the way to verbalize, the way sentence structure, where just so much communication just comes from reading. And I've always read, and I was sitting there and I was going, geez, there's nothing to do here. There's no games to go to. The kids are sitting at home. I don't think they'd really started the online learning portion of schools yet. And what can I've got this streaming service. It's just sitting here idle. What can I do? And I said, I could read. I love to read. Kids probably love to read. Parents are probably looking for an hour or two just to set the kids down and maybe go out and grab a lunch or, have just a step away from having to babysit the kids 24/7. And so I sat there. What can I do? And I, reading with Rick, alliteration. Hey,
there you go.
It flowed off the tongue perfectly. And so I gathered up some books, I thought, and I reached out. I put out some messages on Facebook, and I had one family donate several books, chapter books they're called, where it's just a short, kind of a short novella, if you want to call it that, where it's easy to read in one sitting and, have a beginning, middle, and end to a story. I had authors find out, I'm not sure how, maybe through word of mouth on Facebook, but I had authors from around the country sending me different children's books. Hey, here you go. I heard what you were doing, and I'd get a package in the mail. And so, okay, tonight's feature is, the duck, swims to Jersey, or whatever the name of the book was. So I started doing that. And then I thought, there's an opportunity for older kids, the teenagers, so I said Friday nights I'll do a little higher level, type of reading. So some of the classics, I would break those out on Friday nights, do a Western maybe, a Louis L'Amour, any of the famous, at Christmas time, I did took me about a week to do, but every night I did away with the children's books and I just read chapter of A Christmas Carol, so we went through the whole story, leading up to Christmas. So, it was just a fabulous reaction at the beginning. I was just like, hey, send me pictures of your kids listening. And I just got flooded with photos of kids just sitting on their couches, wrapped up in a blanket, staring at a computer. You could just, and it's just like, that hits home, it's working. So it was, So, and every once in a while I'll have requests say, hey, would you think about bringing Reading with Rick back for, maybe for Easter or Christmas or whatever. And I've done that. It didn't die when COVID ended. It has come back, and I'm sure it will come back again. So yeah, that has been, it was a really interesting thing that turned out remarkably well, that I think people enjoyed, and I'm really proud that it somehow came out of my head to do.
That's awesome. Way to go. That's awesome. Jim, shall we thank some sponsors?
Yeah. We're coming from the Aquarius Home Services Studios, and we are sponsored by Pizza Barn in Princeton. That's Jody Stay's family owned. Well, not family owned. Yeah, it's her family, but it's Jody does the thing. She's the one who supports everybody who comes through town, the officials, the high school sports, the youth sports. We've been up there. We love the food. Even more, we love the people. So tell us a little more about Pizza Barn in Princeton.
Yeah, as we're talking, it's April Fool's Day, and it's us three April Fools doing the podcast today. But it's that means it's a new month. It's a new pizza of the month at the Pizza Barn. It's the Seafood Scampi. This is a pizza I have not heard of. I don't know if this is new up there. I'm intrigued by the Seafood Scampi. It's got all the great stuff you expect from the Pizza Barn, their homemade crust, their homemade garlic butter, a medley of shrimp, scallops, and crab. I'm a seafood guy. I like that. Freshly shredded mozzarella, finely shredded Parmesan, their own pizza topper. That's good for dine-in, carry-out, delivery, or take and bake all month. The Seafood Scampi. Don't forget about the Pizza Barn's famous lunch buffet, Monday through Friday from 11:30 to 1:30. They've got a lot of great choices, different choices every day. You'll enjoy that. And like you said, Jim, thanks to our great friend Jody Stay and her great crew at the Pizza Barn. 42 years of service from the Pizza Barn, from her parents who started it. Jody and her family now have taken over for a long time. They'll take great care of you, and you'll have a great meal in a great setting.
Yes, you will. Thanks to Jody and Rick. I love the fact that you were that enterprising during COVID, and you're serving your public, serving your community. That's just really admirable.
Yeah, it was just tremendously fun. I'd find myself looking forward to it all day long. I can't wait to get out there and read and stuff. So yeah, it really was a neat thing to be able to do.
Rick, let's I got a couple more questions for you here. Yeah. Let's talk about baseball cards.
Sure.
Another passion. As a kid, I'm sure, like all of us, you collected baseball cards, but that's taken on a whole new thing recently, hasn't it?
Oh, well, I don't think I could collect cards today as a kid. You can't walk into a mom and pop grocery store or dime store and pick up a pack of cards for $1 anymore. They're $15 now, and you get 4 cards. And
plus, you probably got to buy the whole box. You got to spend a couple of $100. I don't know what they cost.
Foil and all this stuff. I said, just give me some basic cards so I can, I just want to see who the offensive guard for the Cleveland Browns is.
Right.
But the industry has certainly changed from when I was a kid and to what it is now. And I wish companies would find a way to go back, because I think sooner or later you're going to run out of people to sell these high priced cards to, because kids just aren't falling in love with them. When you can't afford them, there's nothing to fall in love with.
That's it. And you've got a bunch of cards from a company that you distribute at amateur baseball, correct?
Yeah. This was another one of those things. It's kind of like the reading with Rick. My mind sometimes is idle for too long, and I come up with some ideas. But about this would have been maybe 6 or 7 years ago. The Topps, which is the most famous baseball card company, Topps, was running a promotion, and I think it was something like reintroduce kids to cards or something like that. It was at that time trying to get that 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old again to pick up a pack of cards and buy it. And I said, that's exactly my thoughts there. And so just on a whim one day, I went online and I looked for Topps, customer service, found an email address and just picked it out of a hat. And, it's a corporate thing. I could have picked anybody, but I just happened, I think, to pick the absolutely right guy to get in contact through luck, nothing else. And I said, hey, Mike, my name is Rick, blah, blah, blah. I broadcast baseball games in the summer. I do about 80 ball games a summer, along with high school baseball and softball. And I'm around kids all the time at the ballpark. And I thought it would be a great, neat idea if maybe somehow Topps could find their way to maybe just provide me with a few packs to just hand out at a game. And he didn't hesitate. Oh, absolutely. What's your mailing address? And so I'm like, oh, okay, here it is. And sure enough, about a week later, I'm sitting in. This was, I think, summer because it was a nice day out. And a UPS truck backed up into my driveway. The driver gets out and said, I didn't order anything, I don't think. I didn't expect a UPS truck to be coming. The guy comes out with a big dolly, opens up the back, and commences to unload 18 cases of sample pack cards. And in each sample pack, there were about 7 to 8 cards in clear cellophane wrappers. They're just They're just samples of their current year of cards. But in each case, there was perhaps 500 of those sample packs. So I sat and I started to do the math. They gave me over 81,000 cards to hand out. Oh, so man. I had 18 cases of Topps baseball cards. So every game I would load them up. I'd throw them in my equipment bag, and I'd bring them with me, or I'd bring a tray of them to me, and I'd give a tray to the concession stand here, hand them out for foul balls or whatever to kids. And,
sure.
And then kids would run up to the press box, and I wouldn't make it easy. I wouldn't just hand them out. I'd give them a trivia. I'd be on the air and say, "Hey, here's Timmy. Timmy, who's your favorite Twins player? Who's the Twins batting hero in the '87 series?" And if they got it, they got it. If they didn't, they didn't. But I'd reward them with a handful of packs of cards. I had only one stipulation. I said, can't leave the wrappers laying around, because right away I'd come out there and I'd see these cellophane wrappers laying all over. I said, no, I can't have that. So they learned in a hurry. But it took me years to get rid of 81,000 cards. And the kids, they used to get a quarter or whatever for shagging foul balls. They didn't want those anymore. They preferred the baseball cards. So I just think it was amazing that I think I just picked the right guy. And I've tried to go back now that I've run out and said, hey, I explained the history, this guy did this for me, and I've never even gotten a response from them. I think they've kind of been corporatized a little bit more than they were at that point. Sure. So,
well, that happens.
Yeah, it does. That's the age we live in.
There you go.
But yeah, that was pretty neat.
That is awesome, Rick. You've done so many cool things that I know everybody appreciates. One more question I've got for you here. What's the future hold for radio, for streaming? I mean, 15 years ago, you say streaming. No, they think you're fishing. You're trout fishing or something. What do you see in the coming years here? I don't want to put you on the spot and make predictions, but where are we headed?
It's so hard to judge what technology is going to allow us to do. I think so much, and I feel like I'm kind of behind the curve just from the fact of I'm an audio only stream, and so much is with the NSPN that does such a wonderful job in partnership with the Minnesota State High School League. I mean, what a valuable thing that is to be able to watch any game you want at any time. It's just unbelievable. And but yeah, it's I've toyed with the idea of maybe incorporating some kind of video with my amateur baseball. Start there, kind of dip my toe in the water. I don't really want to get involved with video with the high school just because of what that all entails, but just to see where I'm headed overall, where I would think it's going to head. I think it's just going to become easier and easier. When I first started, it was, well, how does streaming work? What do I have to do? How do I listen? And now, grandparents and stuff, I've got an app for both Android and iOS devices, free, and they can just, it's become so much easier and more commonplace that people are aware of how to access online content now.
Right, exactly.
When Grandma's sitting there playing solitaire, she can also click on my stream and be listening, and hey, Red Jack on Black Queen, Jimmy just made a 3-pointer.
Yeah, anywhere in the world too. That's
anywhere.
This isn't AM or FM. Anywhere.
One of my favorite stories when I first started, our girls, the Pierz girls, had a game, Sakis, and Pat Calpine is the girls basketball coach. He's the AD there too, and I've known Pat for a long time. And I told him, said, "Hey, Pat, this is new," and he goes, "Oh, I'm going to tell my brother, and he's going to be listening." And I said, "Oh, where's your brother?" "Shanghai, China."
Oh Lord.
So yeah, so I mean, it's been. I get people from, "Hey, we're listening in the Bahamas. We're down here vacationing. We're go Pioneers," or just wherever they are. Yeah, we're
That's
vacationing
fantastic.
at the lake, listening to the ball game. But we're so. Yeah, it really hits home how wide-reaching it is.
That's awesome. Hey, Jim, I'm gonna drop a few unrelated notes in here, if that's okay with you.
Go right ahead.
I want some personal thank yous. Speaking of radio professionals, audio professionals like Rick Grammond, I was happy to spend about half an hour on Friday afternoon doing an interview with my buddy Dwight Cadrell from Duluth, WKLK, WMOZ. He has me on there basically at the end of every season. We'll usually record about in half an hour. He does a lot of high school sports up there, and this is the greatest honor I've ever had. We taped it on Friday, and that interview was part of the Coach's Corner show on Saturday morning, which is a rock solid part of especially small town radio. Those Saturday morning Coach's show. And let me reiterate something, a point I make frequently about my job. The best part of my job, I get to know people like Rick and Dwight, media people, fans, coaches, administrators. It's fantastic. Speaking of coaches, another longtime friend of mine is Tim Gleason, who last week stepped down after 19 years as the head girls basketball coach at Winona High School. In total, 31 years on the coaching staff. Tim led the team to 3A championship games back-to-back 2016 and 17. He will continue in his roles as a band director, a track and field coach, and an all-around great guy. He and I I will call it an emotional texting exchange after he announced this. He's just one of the best people I know. And the best part of it is he's not going anywhere. I'll still be able to hang out with him and give him the needle. And the last thing I've got is this week's most valuable teammate. Annie Bode is the senior basketball player at Parker's Prairie, who has been the definition of a team first player. She was a selfless leader for the team this season, putting the success of the team ahead of her own. She's an incredible role model for younger athletes, as well as kids in elementary school, where she volunteers daily. Congrats to Annie Bode of Parker's Prairie on being named a most valuable teammate. And again, great thanks to Rick Grammond for joining us today. This was really good, Rick. You and I go way back, and I knew it was darn time I had you on the podcast. Congratulations on everything you've done and continue
I'd just like to
do.
Thank you, John, and thank Tim Layton at the Minnesota State High School League. I'm honored to be included in company that includes great peers and friends of guys like Mike Bielka at Brainerd and Tom Elliott down in Wilmer that have been honored with this award too. So I'm in rare company with those gentlemen.
Well, and well deserved, Rick. Thanks so much for joining us. And Jim, I think that's a show.
That's a great show, Rick. Thanks so much. Thanks for your good work. I'm very happy for you. And this is just one of the great things about John's show is he introduces us to so many great people. So thanks to John. Thanks to Rick. Thanks to everyone who listens to TalkNorth.com. John's show will be back next week.